Somebody's in a real BTA situation right now. I mean, they're getting themselves a good old fashioned ass whooping. The type that is damn near borderline abusive in today's age, but once upon a time, not so much. Like when a parent would have you go choose their weapon of choice, the switch, the belt, the flip flop, the shoe, God forbid, the extension cord. I've even heard some say the Hot Wheels track. Pretty much whatever can be found on hand to make an impact is what someone is finding themselves on the other end of. And it's brutal. It's brutal to say the least. And what really tickled me a bit, not because of the situation, but the way the cards were just talking was so interesting, because it's as if somebody was in the midst of an ass whooping and they tried to grab the belt. Now, if you're of a particular age, you know what that means. You just extended the penalty by a few more licks at the very least. And I can't say that I have any firsthand experience of this personally, but I have been a firsthand witness to certain encounters that I shall allow to be anonymous. So I've seen it. I've seen this happen. And so when I was seeing it play out in the cards, I'm just like, that's a funny way to project this message. But then I was getting other images like, getting whooped so bad, to the point where you ever hear comedians joke about how you get that thrash that makes you mute for a second before you can cry. It's like you have all the facial expressions of the outburst and the cry, but it just don't come out. And then all of a sudden it releases itself. Like that shock of a strike is what I was seeing. And also I was seeing that it's one of those things, another old to old school, where you ain't just getting your ass whooped by your mom. You would be lucky for it to stop there. But it's like, and when your father gets home, you gonna have to deal with him too. So it's like when the dad gets home, it's gonna be way, way worse. And it's gonna be much more harsh of a punishment than your mom in most cases, especially when we talking about old school. And then I saw like somebody being sent to their room like that. The whooping was so bad, it's one of those where you ultimately just cry yourself to sleep or fall asleep in your misery for the most part. And all of this sounds so traumatic, especially considering we definitely, if you, like I said, at a certain age, you know this all too well. You may even know it personally, but I'm telling you, this is what I saw. And then what I saw was that not only was somebody whooped by mama and papa, then they were sent to their room, and then to make matters worse, they've been grounded. So it's not even just like, all right, well, he's had enough. He's got his ass whooped double. I think he's the punishment fits the crime, whatever the crime may be at this point. But it's like, oh no, now you're going to be grounded. Now you're going to be on punishment. And then I saw someone trying to, after some time, like more or less kind of bribe themselves out of punishment by like appealing to the softer guardian or the softer disciplinarian, like a mom, like trying to do chores in the house, or make certain, be on good behavior, so to speak, trying to put themselves in a position where mom or dad, at least mom first, could be influenced to say, all right, I'll let you off early, or I'll let you off easy, or whatever. But it's like, nope, somebody can't get no sympathy from mom to get an early release. And so they know if they can't win mom over, they damn sure can't win dad over, because he might be persuaded by mom, and that's a might. But if mom is sticking to her guns, then surely dad is not going for it. Like, whatever somebody did was irritating enough, at least to their parents or to whomever the authority of this situation is, that there's just no room for leniency. There's very little room for grace. It's like maybe someone still has a liberty to have certain privileges within the home. Maybe that's a leniency. But as far as being let off their punishment early, no. So it's like the ass whooping has been extended even without the physicality. So, funny enough, who I saw this person grabbing the belt from, if you can just take my word for it, I swear it was in the cars, but it was a lot of cars that just were like speaking. So I was like, I'll put them back and start fresh. It was the devil. It was like somebody disappointed the mom, but they angered the dad. But the dad was showing up as the devil, honey. Like so clear, you know? So it was like somebody tried to grab that belt in the midst of an ass whooping, and that just infuriated that devil energy that much more. So, how I feel this translates spiritually, for the most part, let's say generally speaking, is someone obviously angered some spirits or angered some authority, um, some supreme energy of sorts, and where there's typically grace to be petitioned for, somebody's finding themselves at a void, or in a void, to be able um to bargain or even barter for that grace. And that part is hurtful as it is. It's like the ass whooping was justified, more or less, like, not a I'm not condoning, capital is it capital punishment? Corporal. My bad. I'm not condoning corporal punishment on that level. Absolutely not. I don't subscribe to it, even in my own parenting. But like I said, I know the come from, and I'm old enough to, to have seen some things. And so, me personally, I was never the type of child that really needed no ass whooping. I can remember one ass whooping I got in my entire life that ultimately wasn't even warranted because it was a big mistake, and then there needed to be an apology made. So needless to say, I never was beat again after that. But other than that, all you had to do was talk to me, look at me a certain way. I didn't want to be in trouble. I didn't want to disappoint my parents. So I tried more or less to stay, on the up and up. Now that would come to haunt me and be somewhat imbalanced and later in life, but it is what it is. That part I can absolutely say. But yeah, so it's like somebody disturbed some order of things. There was an expectation that they were supposed to fulfill, or an agreement or some sorts that was broken, and the consequence, the response was to get their ass kicked. The Wheel of Fortune was the first card out, where it ultimately justifies that, this is karmic, that it was necessary. Like I said, the punishment more or less fit the crime to some degree. But when they tried, the belt grabbing part is someone trying to almost like put a stop to, or like they don't want to completely fulfill the consequence of their infractions or their indiscretions, or whatever we're talking about here. So someone did something further incriminating, or not incriminating, but I don't know what the word would be, but it's like somebody took action in their own hands, literally grabbing that belt to stop what was destined, what was fated, what was in order. But even that act of interference was was itself out of order. And so therefore, not only, as I said in the message, not only did they not stop what was ultimately coming to them, but they actually enhanced the intensity of it to a point where it may have stopped sooner or may not have been as intense as it ultimately became, on account of them trying to stop it in the midst of it in the first place, if that makes sense. So plainly put, like, somebody had something coming to them, perhaps by way of karma, which was justified because it was already what they put out, and they tried to take some side hand steps to either shortcut their experience or do something even further damaging that was, again, like I said, out of order. And now it's like a compounded sentence or repercussions or consequence on top of that. So like I said, they already got their ass beat, not just by mom but by dad. And I get with the mom energy, it might not even have been a physical beating, but it might even be like, I'm just disappointed in you. You know, like when you anger your mom, and mom is usually the hardest to anger. It hits different. It's like, dad, you kind of expect they're gonna have a different type of reaction. Generally speaking, this might not be everybody's experience, but just generally speaking. But mom, you can kind of expect a certain level of grace from her. So it might not have been an actual ass whooping, but it's just like mom even talking to you a certain way, if you're a certain type of child, can hit different. And then for her to leave you up to your dad, like, and your dad is going to deal with you when you get home. Now, that's a different story. But then, like I said, on top of that, you're on punishment. And then on top of that, you get no early release. So somebody intensified their consequences and they have no way of reversing it before it is completely finished out. That's where we are. All right. So what's up? I'm Danae. Here with a message for you, Avi. It's 1:22 on the clock. Friday, May 29th, 2026. So let's just see. I got the black and white deck, nothing fancy today. We want to keep it simple and just see what comes up, okay? Hope you're doing well, by the way. We do have that powerful full moon, a blue moon, coming up on the 31st. That could be a lot of the closure and culmination that has been flushing out through the readings lately, where the inevitable is now present tense. It's no longer a possibility or a maybe so, or there's a slim chance that it might not be. It's like, no, whatever is destined, whatever is ordained, whatever has been proclaimed or ruled, all of these things is undoubtedly it. This is that, very much so. And I think oh no, it didn't. I thought my flash went on, which would be kind of early for it to overheat, but let's see what we got. Oh, what I said. World card. It's a huge, and I feel like this moon is so sneaky, like this whole month. But don't say I didn't say so, because I said at the very beginning when we started this month with the full moon that this whole month would be one of major endings and closures. And it's kind of sneaky, like, to be honest, it's given like eclipse energy in an interesting way, and there might be some astrological reason for that I'm just not aware of, but it's given eclipse energy where it's undoubtedly the closure that is needed for the divine satisfaction and for the purposes of closing open-ended chapters and cycles that in some cases should have been closed, but now it's like it's time to move on. You know, it's like that moment where you can't delay any longer. You can't play around. You can't, you know, like, I don't know why I'm getting this image, but like in New York, well, this is kind of weird how it came up, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like the train in New York, right? Sometimes people hold up the train and they are able to do so for a little while. Like if somebody wants to let somebody jump in, or, you know, like somebody will hold the train so you can jump in or whatever. But after a while, it's like you either going to get slammed in that door or you're going to get screamed at by the conductor and embarrassed, if you can be embarrassed by such a thing. It's like only but so long and so much you can hold up that train because it's on schedule to get somewhere because other trains are soon to follow. So that's the energy. I guess it does kind of make sense, but that's the vision I just saw just now. And it's like you don't really want to play with those doors, not too much, you know, because yeah, you put your arm in, you'll most likely trap it open for a little bit, but it's definitely going to hurt, first of all, because those doors are not built to be manipulated like that, especially the older trains. But like I said, eventually something's going to have to give. Either somebody's getting left, or you're going to get off, or you're going to get in trouble with that conductor. So take that how it resonates. But let's keep going. That was an interesting way for it to come up to me. So I guess it's given like somebody delayed the inevitable for a long time in terms of what the consequences of their actions, the coming around of what they sent around, you know, like what goes around comes around. They were able to reroute that or delay it or keep it at bay for as long as they possibly could. But the universe, the conductor of creation is like, it's time to move on. No more of that. We're done with that. This train has been delayed long enough. Let's see. Ooh, not the 5 of Cups, child. That's sad news for somebody. It's a hard pill to swallow. It's a hard truth to accept. That somebody, and at this point, it's like, no need of crying over spilled milk, because what's done is done. What actions were taken before the closing of this cycle are set in stone at this point. The only thing that can be done is to move forward. As I say, you can't go back and do over, but you can move forward and do better. And that's what someone is faced with. But they're not feeling too great about the idea of moving forward from this point of where they stand, because it's quite bleak, you know, grievous, as a matter of fact. If they feel like they don't have a lot to work with, which is not true, because they do. There's still 2 cups behind them. But somebody that's still grieving the past and wishing that they could turn back the hands of time, or, you know, like I said, do over, is going to be disappointed in this season, because it's just, you can't manipulate time and energy that way anymore. Now you have to actually, and here it is. That might have been the whole grabbing the belt aspect, where someone's been trying to manipulate energy, manipulate fate, in a way that they just don't have the liberty or authority to do so. And it's like, no, you don't get to do that. This is what you sent around. This is what's coming back to you. You don't get to reroute it elsewhere or to someone else, or keep it in a box and, you know, off somewhere where it can't harm you, or where, you know, there's no effect. That it's just, now you're just making it worse, because that liberty that you took is actually against the rules or against the universal law. So now you got to get your ass whooped for that too, or you're going to be on punishment for some extended time because you tried to hold up the train, the divine train. maybe even throw it off the track. Remember I said something about a Hot Wheels track? Don't it look like that? My son used to be in the Hot Wheels, not so much anymore. But yeah, like a Hot Wheels track, and it's got a little bandage here, a little bandage there. It's like somebody tried to derail the train altogether. And, you know, and when you do that, imagine you're willing to risk a whole lot of lives, innocent lives, that are just trying to get to their destination as well, going to work, going to school, going to visit somebody, going home. And you just decide, well, fuck all that, because I don't want this train to move forward. I'm just going to derail it for everybody on board. And maybe the grievance here is lives that were lost or crossed on account of some. That's the compounding of karma. That somebody just couldn't keep their licking and keep on ticking. They had to take a whole lot of people down with them to so-called, in an effort to save themselves, which was never going to happen, because you were never going to avoid the inevitable. But like I said, now you got to get another punishment because you didn't hurt some other people along the way. That is disappointing. Sun card. And you know how it is when you sad or depressed. It don't even matter if it's a sunny day. Can't nothing pick you up. Or imagine like I was saying about being on punishment, where you got to look outside and see all the other kids playing, having a good time, but you can't go out and join them. Hear that. So this cycle is ending, it's closing. Somebody's finding themselves on probably at the bottom of the wheel of fortune that I spoke of, but they're having to sit and watch everybody else live their best life, that perhaps maybe that were saved on that runaway train just in the nick of time, or never got on it, thankfully, or whatever the case may be. They're having to watch folks get on with their happy lives while they sit in their sorrow. And they ain't got nothing to be thankful. Well, they got plenty to be thankful for, but they don't feel like they have anything to be happy about, because they can't frolic in the sun like everybody else is doing on account of their own actions. So that's another layer of the whammy, because they have nobody to blame but themselves. They would want to blame someone else. That might even be those Three of Cups, the spilled milk, like blaming it on anybody, any circumstance, any excuse will do. But it's like, nah, this one's on you. The actions that you took, nobody else grabbed that. First of all, nobody else did what you did to get in trouble in the first place. That's number one. But then you're going to grab the bell? Now you're really in trouble. And given, like I said, it was coming, it's like grabbing the belt from the devil. It's like, ain't no grace when it comes to that energy. Not to compare real dads, even disciplinary dads, to the devil, but it's assumed that there will be no grace when you're dealing with that energy. So you should have just kept your nose clean. Maybe literally, I don't know, because we got spilled cups here. Could be some type of addictions that somebody got caught back up into, or some type of, vice or something or another, some level of lust or obsession, possession, that somebody allowed themselves to, they found themselves in the bad grace of, they promised, bit off more than they could chew, or promised something and under produced, or whatever, whatever the case may be. You're not gonna shortcut that devil energy doing something nefarious. That's the thing. It's like somebody trying to undercut their misgivings with something illegal or something else, like that. You're never gonna do that. That's just gonna give the devil even more ammunition to wail on you, now that you've actually, earned that much even more, So, I don't know. This, I don't know. Somebody, yep. Wheel of Fortune. I told y'all was out here. First card out. Now it's dead center. More or less from where I'm probably going to end. Because we don't need to go too hard on this one. Here's me being the lenient mommy. They've had enough. Have they learned their lesson? I doubt it. No. No, not yet. They still gotta, that's exactly why the punishment can't be alleviated just yet, because this is giving somebody still either trying to beat the system or, like I said before, make excuses, find a loophole, finesse their way out, something. They still trying to find a way to win. And we know Five of Swords is win at all costs. So it's like they still, even if there's nobody for them to sacrifice, all right, it's still like having the mentality to contemplate, like, who can I throw under the bus to get this win? Like, is there any way that I can have this work out for me, even if there's some casualty to somebody else? Maybe not as grand of a scale as the world card derailing a train, off the track. But is there anybody that maybe I can justifiably, they're trying to find a loophole, throw under the bus, maybe that deserves it, or maybe, whatever philosophy they may have about it. Just the sheer intention at this point, when you've already done too much, just exemplifies that somebody deserves to sit and think about what they've done and who they've been for that much longer, until this is purged from their energy, until they've literally learned their lesson and have realized where they went wrong, where they fell short, where they didn't do the right thing, and how they could change their perspective to do something different moving forward. Until somebody is there, they're going to sit right in their house and watch everybody play outside. And that could be physically and that could be spiritually. Wow, with justice. Oh my goodness. This message is fire. Like, I mean, in the sense that it's just so clear and direct. What more can I say? And that's probably how that feminine force feels, that they would want to petition, like, oh, I'm sorry, Mom, I didn't really mean it. Look, I washed the dishes, I cleaned the garage, my room is clean, blah 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 blah. It's been so long. Can I just go outside for a little bit? And Mom's like, nope, time, nope. You still, even the world, time. Like, no, you still got some time left. Not yet, because I need to make sure that you are never going to do this again. Somebody could have been lying. Well, we already know they were willing to throw people under the bus and sacrifice whomever, whatever, however, whenever, if it meant that they could win. So you can't have that type of energy just running around before it's time to get clocked. Because it would certainly the more an energy like that continues to get away with things, the more that they will becomes addictive. And maybe that is the vice of how someone was able to finesse the system, or to make continuous sacrifices for the sake of the win, whatever that win may have been for them, or to advance, or to get ahead of others. to appeal to a certain ideal or persona or perception or whatever. And it's like, if you are willing, when you're willing to do it the first time and you are not reprimanded for it, and as a matter of fact it appears to have worked in your favor, it can become a habit, maybe even an addiction, maybe even an obsession. And that could be the devil energy there, where it's like you bartered with the wrong side of yourself. You know, like you made deals with your shadow. 140 lighting up on the clock. You made too many deals and concessions with your shadow to advance in whatever way we're talking about here, or obtain, achieve, whatever. And the thing about it is, the expectation on the return for those shadows is very high, and it was never meant for you to be able to deliver and to satisfy it. It was always meant for you to falter at some point in time, which is why, as I said, the punishment fits the crime, because the moment that you made that contract or agreement with your shadow is the moment you were always on track for karma, to have its way at some point. But then for you to try to intercept that when it's justified, it literally is just due. Like I said, you just gave that spirit even more jurisdiction over your being to inflict, or not inflict, but what's the right word? To enforce, I guess, another layer of consequence and repercussion, maybe even something quite much more violent. As I started this, I kind of left that in the dust and veered into more of the spiritual aspect, but it might be something that has literally put someone in harm's way because of the choices that they've taken, especially considering, as I said, when you're willing to put people, in a fatal situation if it means saving yourself. Well, we know how that balances out. You might find yourself in something that's fatal or close to it, life-threatening or near death even. Didn't I say something about death earlier? I forget where it was kind of a tongue slip, but maybe it wasn't. And that's the type of thing where remember I said you'll be sitting in the house while everybody's playing. Somebody might literally be out of commission because the universe had to go that far for someone to finally get it. And hell, they may still not get it, depending on how hard-headed somebody is. Somebody that got to get beat with a belt usually is that type of person. When it got to go that damn far, if not considering it be, when I'm thinking about the type of old school ass whooping in my mind, even though it's taboo now, I'm thinking about when you did something and you deserve to have your ass whooped. Not now, not by now standards, but back then. So it's not like somebody just necessarily being overly abusive. I mean, even the devil energy, it'll let you get away with whatever as long as you don't step on its toes, and as long as you keep feeding that shadow of what it requires. But the moment you default on what its expectations are, is the moment it just has full reign to just pounce on your ass, and it will, So it's like somebody was just playing with fire here and pushing limits that, I mean, literally writing checks that they ass couldn't cash. Maybe literally. Oh no, let's see. Oh Lord, what's that? Oh, okay. Well, we got, you know what this is? Justice being served and satisfied. That's what that is. That's what that is. And it's like one way or another, whether somebody gets to the point where they actually finally learn their lesson. And look at this, it's 9 cups from 5. So like I said, somebody's got a long way to go before they actually get it. But then it will make the ass whooping all worth it, because somebody is actually a changed man, or has changed their ways, their ideas, their concept, their energy has been transformed on account of maybe even the trauma that they incurred on account of course, their own actions. But even if they don't, it says that if somebody spends the rest of their days on punishment in the house, not in the mix of good favor and fortune in a spiritual sense, kind of like left out of the bliss of life, it's no consequence to the divine. If someone wants to live out their existence that way, that would be their choice, and that would be justified as well, because it's really putting you imagine, like, when you're put on punishment, you're restricted. So someone can choose or refuse, in this case, to see the error of their ways and stay the same, and they'll just be confined to those quarters that are, to say the least, miserable. Or they'll find, what's probably even sadder than that is, like, once you've been on punishment for so long, you actually start to get content with it. But the fact of the matter is, not being on punishment is so much more liberating. It's so much more freeing. It's so, to be outside when you want to be outside is the dream, ultimately, at least to have the choice. You don't want to start making yourself comfortable in confinement. That's a whole nother layer of, at that point, almost a self-inflicted prison or punishment. So it's like somebody can get accustomed to being captivated, more or less, or they can allow their experiences to evolve them, to transform them for the best. So it gives hope that it's definitely never too late, as I've said before, I actually said that, prison is supposed to be for reform, and I really meant to say rehabilitation in a former message, but I guess it's a little bit of both. So if somebody can be really rehabilitated, even on account of the worst that they experience, then it's still good for them. But if they get complacent and comfortable in a cycle of karma, then that's on them. That's just the way the cookie crumbles, literally. And there's no love lost to the divine when there are other folks that are literally living and dying to find themselves on the upswing of that wheel, honorably and honestly, and with no detriment or casualty to anyone else. That's who the divine would rather focus on. It'll let the lesser energy just pretty much, contain itself. So, all right, let's see. Exactly. Yeah, it's like it's other blessings to be dispersed at this point. Like, the anointing is reserved for those that really want to do something well with it. It's not to be poured out on those that are still crying over spilled milk, or don't understand the error of their ways, and don't have any intentions on doing any better for themselves. Like, that flow and overflow is reserved for the opposite. Queen of Pentacles. And there is the fruit that is to be harvested from the inside out through this new cycle, this new era that is undoubtedly underway and is no longer in delay, and is given like an overflow of everything that's been held up unjustifiably too. You know, it's fine. It's going to be springing forth seemingly out of nowhere. Like when you look at trees as the seasons pass, and it's like, oh, that has flowers now. When did that happen? Or, oh, look at those fruits. I didn't even know that tree had fruit. You know, but this is something that's been being watered and nurtured, and you know, nurtured in the sun, and naturally nurtured for a long time, even when there was opposition to keep it in the ground or to keep it from blooming or blossoming or ever bearing fruit. It was always going to, at some point in time, the root couldn't be killed. That's deep. They couldn't kill the root. So no matter what, fruit was destined to be harvested. As long as someone is for those that have been intentional about nurturing themselves from the inside out, you know, in those places and spaces where you couldn't get to and you couldn't really see so easily. Well, the opposition couldn't so much. You know, case in point, the type of child that I said I kind of was, where it's like, you don't really want to be caught doing nothing bad per se, you know, like, so when nobody is watching, you more or less are, you know, doing what you're supposed to be doing, at least what you think you're supposed to be doing. Not saying I was a perfect child, because I wasn't, but for the most part, like, even when I was a baby, my mom said that she could, when I was a small kid, my mom would say that she could leave me in a room alone playing with my toys, and when I come back, I was still there doing the same thing. Like, she never had to worry about what I was doing when she wasn't watching, or what trouble I was getting myself into out of her presence or whatever. And I'm not saying that that is the mold for the perfect child or person, because sometimes you need a little bit of a rebel spirit to make change. And that's, you know, the balance of it all is what makes the difference, which again, I learned later in life, that sometimes you just have to go your own way, even if it is contrary to what would make those that you care about more comfortable. But generally speaking, you know, I'm talking about the fruit coming forth, or bearing from those that could be trusted, you know, could be trusted, managing themselves, managing what they have, whether it be a little or a lot, and certainly, you know, being it being assured that they wouldn't necessarily try to cause any harm to anyone outside of themselves, even if it was for survival's sake, you know. And sometimes in the worst of times, when your back is really up against the wall and you feel almost justified to do something just to survive again, and you maintained integrity, you stood your ground, you stayed faithful to truth, to honor, to justice, to what is fair. And, you know, like I said, the root of your character, you know, the root of your nature couldn't be severed, even when there were many attempts to do so, maybe even to coerce you with pressure to do something out of your nature or out of character, and you still didn't take the bait or bite the bullet, you know. Like I said, not perfection, but just intention, you know, good intention, pure intention. And so here it is, After all of those years, seasons, maybe even lifetimes of watering your nature like you would a crop, a plant, or whatever, nurturing with the best intentions, believing that someday something's going to break through the ground, something's going to blossom, something's going to bear fruit. Here it is. And for those on the opposite end that continue to nurture and water bad seed in the ground, or more or less try to keep good seed from growing, whatever the case may be, it's like they invested their energy into the wrong things, not realizing that those were the consequences and the realities that they were actually growing, harvesting for themselves. And when there was a realization like of that, it was like, oh no, that's not the fruit I wanted, but it's the fruit you grew. So yeah, you're going to take this, you're going to eat this. Hopefully you can transmute it. Hopefully you can sustain yourself vitally on it. And eventually, find the wisdom to start planting better seeds so you can yield a better harvest. God willing, as long as you still have breath and time to do so. And it seemed like to me somebody ain't got nothing but time. So they just might as well turn things around. It's like, when you gotta go away, it's like nobody would choose that. But how are you gonna spend that time? From not just it being punishment in the house, but maybe even like being incarcerated. Perhaps only figuratively speaking. But it's like it's not your choice to be in either situation. But how are you going to spend that time? Sulking and crying and moping around, or trying to scheme a way out, or finesse a way to early release? Or are you going to do something productive? Maybe, just maybe, you might get time off, for good behavior when it's deemed to be pure and authentic. Just maybe. So, anyway, but the fact of the matter is, the divine knows what's pure. The divine knows when your heart is really sincere about change and sincere about evolving. You can't fool the divine on that. You can't finesse it. So it has to be real and it has to be righteous. So, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.